Hi, welcome to today's episode of Make It Work. I am your host, Ochuba Okam Ochuba. This is welcoming you to this program. In this program, Make It Work, we handle issues that have to do with marriage, relationship, leadership, career, business, name it. And the essence is, how do we make it work? It is where you make it work, make your marriage to work, relationship, your life, your career, your business, your endeavors. It is when you make it work, and that is why you can live a successful life. So, but today we'll be discussing on the topic communication in marriage. You will agree with me that many marriages are already breaking as it stands today. Never in history have we had the number of divorce cases all over the world. And when you look at the number of divorce cases that we have, and many marriages that have already broken, and the ones that are struggling, you discover one thing, that the absence or communication gap in marriage has contributed in no small measure in bringing divorce, ending marriages, and making sure that people do not get fulfilled in their marriages. In Genesis chapter 2 verse 23 and Genesis 3:12, we see opportunities and occasions where there was a communication between Adam and his wife Eve. But first, we need to understand what communication is so that we will enjoy the discourse. Communication is the art of or process of using words, sounds, signs, behaviors to express oneself in marriage. I'll take that again. Communication in marriage is the art or process of using words, sounds, signs, behaviors to express oneself. So when a husband or a wife passes information across to the spouse, a husband passing information across to the wife, or a wife to the husband, through words, through sounds, through signs, through behaviors, that is communication in marriage. And so when you understand communication in marriage, you also need to understand what a communication gap in marriage will mean. A communication gap will deal with, once the process of the passage of this information is distorted, then there is a gap. As far as the information is not flowing, as far as there is no freedom of free expression of words, sounds, moods, behaviors, whatever it is, that is a means of expression. As far as you are not passing the message, then there's a communication gap. So communication gap is when there's a distortion or even a breakdown in information passage in a marriage. I want you to understand that in Genesis chapter 2 verse 23, Adam saw the wife and said, "This is now the bone of my bone, she shall be called a woman." And between that time, we didn't hear about Adam saying anything about the wife again until in Genesis chapter 3 verse 12, when God asked him about the fruit of the garden that had been eaten and all that. And he replied and responded to God that it was the woman that God gave him. So you see a gap between, this is now the bone of my bone, and she shall be called a woman because she was taken out of my body, out of the man. And the next time you're hearing the man talk about the wife again is in Genesis 3:12, when he was now passing some blames across to the woman. So you see a gap, obviously. So let's look at the effect of communication gap. When there is a communication gap between the man and the woman, and there's no flow of information between two of them, it breeds misunderstanding. So you are sure that when there is a communication gap between the husband and wife, then misunderstanding will always set in. Again, it breeds suspicion. So the man begins to suspect the wife begins to suspect the husband. So there is suspicion. So once there is suspicion, you see that this person is suspecting this one, the other one is suspecting the other person. So you see that there is suspicion. So suspicion has crept into that marriage. Suspicion will actually generate misunderstanding and several other negativities. Again, when there is a communication gap in marriage, it brings pressure. So the man is under pressure, the woman is under pressure, the marital relationship is under pressure, the marriage life is under pressure. So everything is under pressure and everyone suffers. And I want you to understand that communication is the life wire of every relationship. Communication is the life wire of every marriage. So once there is a breakdown in communication, a breakdown in information passage, then the life in that marriage begins to stiffen. So you see that something is dying gradually, because immediately communication gap is created, the marriage begins to die. So the next effect of communication gap in marriage is cracks in relationship. So when there is misunderstanding, when there is suspicion, when there is a pressure in that marriage as a result of communication gap, then you begin to see cracks in that marital relationship, and which could eventually lead to breakup or divorce. So how communication is distorted in marriage is very obvious. So it's obvious how communication is distorted in marriage. Number one, malice. When a man and a woman begin to keep malice in the same house, which is absence or total breakdown of communication, keeping malice, that is how you bring communication gap, malice. Number two is distortion. When there is half information, you are not passing all the information, you are distorting the flow of information, and even the content of the information is being manipulated. It's not everything that you are saying, and you are not also saying it the way you're supposed to say it. So there is distortion. Number three is noise. So communication gap is created, or communication is distorted in marriage through noise. What is noise? Noise is a sound or an action without the right message. Noise is when you are saying something and then you are not passing the message. It's noise. You are supposed to ask somebody about where the person is coming from, and the passage of the information is not just about inquiring about where the person is coming from or what the person is doing, and you are asking the same question in a manner that will not generate the expected answer. So you see that the person will begin to see or hear something different from what you are saying. So most times noise is the gap between what you have in mind to say and what you are actually saying. What you have in mind to demonstrate and what you are actually demonstrating. The next way or effect or how communication gap is created in marriage is mooding. When you are using your mood to express yourself. So expressing oneself through mood in a marriage is a way of distorting information or creating communication gap in marriage. Now, where are you using your mood to express yourself? Don't you have mouth? Is the person a mind reader? So these are the questions you need to ask yourself. Is the person a prophet? Is the person a mind reader to understand what is in your mind? And then the person is saying you are expecting that he or she should understand what you are saying through your mood. Hello, you need to ask yourself a question again. So how do we bridge this communication gap in marriage? Number one, always speak to your spouse. Now, most times you begin to cry, thinking that through the tears, the person will understand what you have in mind. No, it's not like that. Speak, open your mouth, talk to your wife, talk to your husband. Now, one of the problems about opening up or talking to your spouse is you think that the person is expected to know. So don't always expect that your spouse is supposed to know or is expected to know. You say it. Now, you assume that your wife does not know. Assume that your husband does not know. And open your mouth and speak to the person. So speak to your spouse, and then in speaking to your spouse, speak the truth. And when you are speaking the truth, speak the truth in love. Speak the truth with respect. Now, I want you to understand that each time that you are speaking or communicating with your husband or your wife, if it's your husband, just see him as if you are talking to your boss. And if it is your wife, see her as if you are talking to the queen. So when you approach her and talk to her like a queen, and then you approach him and talk to him as your boss, then you see that it will modulate the way you will talk to him. And some of you that say, I was very angry, I was very angry, that was why I said it like that. Now, how many of you have spoken to your bosses in your offices the way you speak to your spouse just because you are angry? Have you ever spoken to your boss in the office the way you speak to your husband or your wife just because you are not happy? So you see that no matter how angry you are, no matter how disappointed you are, no matter how hurt you are, no matter how offended you are, each time you want to speak to your boss in the office, you will organize yourself. And that is what we expect from you today. When you are talking to your spouse, please put yourself together and don't ever speak down your spouse. Speak up your spouse. If possible, speak up the person. So enhance your communication life by making sure that you are speaking, you are talking. And I believe that with this episode, you are going to be working on the way you express yourself, the way you pass your messages, and then as you do that, I'm persuaded that your marriage will definitely work, and it's definitely going to get better, get sweeter, and you're going to find fulfillment in your marriage. Thank you so much for being part of today's episode, and I'm expecting you to also join us in the next episode. Till then, I remain your host, Ochuba Okam Ochuba. Thank you, and God bless you.